Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face.
So my next interview is also a conversation about a film coming up soon at Hot Docs. You're going to want to see this one as well. In fact, pretty much just assume that I'm going to say that because I probably wouldn't have chosen the film, probably wouldn't have taken the time to watch it and or take notes and engage in a conversation with filmmakers about it. But Olivier Sarbiel and James Jones are here to talk about their new film, On the President's Orders. We get into the Philippines, and we step into the police force there, or at least a portion of it, and we talk about this war on drugs that seems to continue to go on around the world in a different way. And we talk about a whole lot of things. Once again, we get into the ethics behind filmmaking. We talk about photojournalism and why this was like a catalyst and how it acted as a catalyst for both Olivier and James to go a little deeper in this film. We talk about ego and vanity and how to build trust. This really is an observational film, and both Olivier and James talk a great deal about how they wanted to just step back and not judge or come with a critical eye necessarily, but to turn the camera on and to step into something, a situation that is clearly complicated and not easy to work through, but far more nuanced and subtle than perhaps lawmakers and police forces around the world view these things. This isn't just about a war on drugs. This is about people. This is about relationships. This is about poverty and how extreme poverty is a complicated issue. You're going to want to see the film. You're going to want to listen into the conversation. It's coming right up. There's a beautiful phrase in the interview, inconvenient complexity. I mean, that could be the title of their book that they write about international development and filmmaking and stepping into difficult, challenging stories. But inconvenient complexity, stories that matter, coming up on the President's Orders. Don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my speaking and my writing. Facetofacelive.ca for plenty, over 400 interviews with filmmakers and other people who are making a difference around the world in one way or another. Stories that matter. Richard Wagami said stories are meant to heal, and we truly do believe that here at Face to Face. If you can't support us on Patreon, we'd really appreciate that. Monthly support would be wonderful. But if you can't go there, could you at least share the podcast with somebody else, sign up for our newsletter, or maybe leave a review for us on iTunes? We'd certainly appreciate that. It's amazing how a little bit of digital engagement can go a long way. Our voice is growing, our audience is growing, and we'd like to continue to make that happen. And don't forget rabble.ca for a whole host of other writers, thinkers, bloggers, podcasters. You can find out more about what's going on around the world, in Canada in particular, on rabble.ca. News for the rest of us. Coming right up, Olivier Sarbiel and James Jones talking about their new film, On the President's Orders. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by two very special guests here with us today. As we sort of step into the first week before Hot Docs, we have Olivier Sarbiel and James Jones here to talk about their new film, On the President's Orders. Thanks to you both for joining me today.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.
So have we got, basically, we have Canada, the UK, and France talking together right now? Is that what we have?
That's right.
We do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Truly not only an international documentary, but an international conversation as well. So that's kind of cool. Well, listen, guys, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. And hey, right out of the gate, congratulations on the film. Wow, it's engaging, it's compelling, it's riveting from the opening scenes and the opening quotes, and you're about to step into Hot Docs with a North American premiere. You premiered at CPH Docs in Copenhagen. Can you set some context for us before I dive in with? I've got a lot of questions and a lot of places I'd love to go. But anyway, I just wanted to say congratulations and really love the film.
Thank you. That's really
Thank
kind of
you.
you.
So yeah, could you set it up for us just a tiny bit? People who aren't that familiar with what's going on in the country in the Philippines and the drug war and so on. I mean, it's certainly easy to access online, and I'm sure people will be Googling it after our interview. But yes, James, do you mind diving in there?
Sure. So basically, it was a story that Olivier and I had been following for a while. We were just finishing our previous documentary called Mosul, which was about the fight against ISIS in Iraq. And we'd been kind of following the amazing photojournalism that was coming out of the Philippines. And it was, night after night, dozens of bodies ending up on the streets of Manila. And there were these kind of very dedicated Filipino photojournalists going out and capturing these kind of shocking, but kind of eerily beautiful images. And just kind of, it was something that we had followed. And I think we thought, but basically President Duterte came in 2016 and declared all-out war on drug users and drug dealers. And, as you referenced, there's an opening line in the film where he says, Germany had 3 million Jews, the Philippines has 3 million drug users. If Germany had Hitler, the Philippines can have, me. And I think it's the only time I've heard, a serving ruler of a country compare himself to Hitler in a kind of favorable way. And that was on the campaign trail, and that set the tone for his time as president. And he's made drugs, his propaganda makes drugs into the root of all evil. Drug users are subhuman and they need to be wiped out. And so Olivier and I, we'd seen this amazing coverage, but I think we both thought that the way the story was being told had become a bit formulaic. You'd see dead bodies, you'd see crying families, but you didn't really get under the skin of it. You didn't understand who was doing the killing, how they could justify it. And so our idea really was to get out to Manila, the capital, and get access to the police and, get inside their heads and understand the kind of rationale for this mass killing, which has led to, at least 5,000 deaths by police in uniform and many, many more kind of vigilante style killings. And so we went out on a recce. We thought actually at the worst possible time, because it was a moment when the drugs got a bit hot and controversial. And so even President Duterte had to say, I'm going to cool things down. And we went to the kind of hot spot of the killings, thinking they'd probably laugh us out of town. They'd see we'd phone halfway across the world and know exactly what story we were trying to do and probably not give us access. And we were just very lucky that we met this police chief who is this kind of larger than life character, almost like a mini Duterte himself. And as ever with filmmaking, when you have someone who's got a big ego and a lot of vanity, that really plays into your hands because they love the idea of being the center of attention. They love the idea of a Frenchman and an Englishman flying across the world to make a film about them. So from day one, really, he threw open the doors of their police station in Caloocan, an area of Manila. And from then on, it was just a case of me and Olivier having to spend every day in the police station winning the kind of trust and confidence of the police officers, some of whom were pretty suspicious of us at first, I would say. They'd never had a documentary crew want to film them having breakfast, film them training. Occasionally they'd have like a news crew would come on an operation, but it took a long time for them to kind of understand the grammar of what we were doing. And frankly, to just kind of relax and let their guard down a bit.
Olivier, how hard did you guys find it to build that trust? I mean, I'm amazed at the footage that you guys had access to. I mean, even the security camera footage, the disturbing security camera footage that opens up the film. I mean, you must have spent a fair bit of time with these guys, just sitting around, having a drink, having coffee, and so on, just building that rapport before you turned on the cameras.
Yeah, no, we did. We never went through the official media center for the police. We didn't have a press, an authorization process from them. So we, like James said, we really spent a lot of time trying to build a common understanding and try to winning them trust. And it took us a lot of time. It took us weeks, months. At some point, we could come in and out of the police station. We could go to the jail, to the SWAT team unit, to the training department, and nobody would care about our presence anymore. We kind of became invisible. And so, yeah, we were able to get that footage, getting that access, really.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, did you ever feel that, and I think it sort of comes out in the film, he wasn't the chief of police, was he? Or is he the chief?
So he's the chief of police in Caloocan. So in that district, which is like 1.5 million people. So it's like a big important area with big slums. But yeah, so he's not the head of the whole police.
Right. There's a point in the film where it seems, and I would imagine it was very intentional that you guys included this, but it appears that the conversation seems to go away from, wow, I wasn't expecting them to ask that question. And boy, they're going a little deeper maybe than I'm comfortable with here. Was there ever a point where he and his team and his police officers, his I don't even know, his crew, let's say, that where they stepped back and they said, okay, enough is enough. We don't want you guys around anymore?
It's a really good question, because it was something that, we knew we needed to confront them about these killings that were happening, because basically it seemed like they'd stopped doing it in uniform on official operations, but basically off-duty police would basically bumping off people who were on what they call the drugs watch list. And we knew we had to confront them about this. And it was, as Olivier said, we didn't have any official authorization. So it was, one day he could wake up and be fed up with us and kick us out, and that would be it. We'd have no film. So we waited till quite late on in the process to really confront him and also the head of the SWAT team. And neither of them reacted in the way we expected. We were worried, exactly as you say, that they'd be shocked, because we'd been kind of friendly with them for months and we'd found the common ground, built this trust, and they kind of let their guard down. To suddenly say, we've been told you're killers, made us nervous, particularly as they are quite unpredictable people. And then as it happened, the police chief kind of denied it, but
right.
in such a hopeless way and unconvincing that, he kind of dug his own grave there. It's kind of clear that he did at some, he spoke about black sheep within the police doing these kind of killings, which is not really a proper denial. And then even more weirdly, the head of the SWAT team initially says, oh no, people think it's the police, but it's absolutely not. And then his eyes kind of shift, dart side to side, is the biggest tell that he might be lying.
Oh yeah, he'd make a terrible poker player.
Poker player, totally. I mean, it was kind of comic. And then as the interview goes on, he lets his guard down, and by the end is kind of laughing manically about sending these drug pushers to hell, and it's their choice and all of that. So it had been something that we'd thought very carefully about, and were pretty stressed about confronting them. And in the end, I don't think it went as we thought, and neither of them seemed particularly offended that we'd asked the question. And I think maybe that's partly because if your president is saying it's okay,
right,
then that gives you kind of carte blanche to do.
Well, and isn't this kind of I mean, what I love about your film is, and I say this all the time, so my listeners are rolling their eyes right now, I suppose, but what I love about a great film is, and especially documentary film, there's so many layers. It seems to me there's so much going on here. This is about journalism, and it's about honesty and authenticity and relationships and poverty and justice and all these things that sort of bubble to the surface as you watch and you reflect, and kind of film that you need to go back and see a second time, and the kind of film that I bet students are going to write essays about. How do you kind of come to terms with that as filmmakers, both as directors as well? How do you kind of land, or is it, hey, we're in agreement, we're going into this really crazy situation that probably is going to be pretty unsafe from day to day. Let's just capture whatever we can and then piece the story together later. Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really touched that you said that about the layers and all the different, because that, I'm glad the film comes across as that rich, because we certainly felt that the subject and what we kind of experienced did have all those different layers and themes. the thing is, with the kind of observational film, you never quite know what you're going to get. So
right.
we were on the ground on and off for like 6 months, and we didn't. When we started, they promised they were going to stop killing. Morikio, the police chief, came in and said, kind of new sheriff in town, going to clean everything up, no more killing. And we didn't. It could have been that he was true to his word and the killing stopped, and then the film would have been quite different. We had a hunch it probably wouldn't go like that, but. It's whenever you're just kind of following characters in a slightly observational way, you're kind of in the lap of the gods. And I think we knew the themes we wanted to get, but we were open-minded. We're not activists, we're journalists and filmmakers, and we wanted to embrace all the nuance and complexity of it. And I think the thing that shocked us in the end was how brazen they were, and how in their mind, how Duterte's propaganda had been so effective that effectively they did see anyone connected with drugs living in the slum as expendable, as a pest. And I think that, as an outsider, is completely shocking.
Yeah, well, as the young woman who lost her brother says, this, if you're poor, you don't get justice. And this is, I guess, is what I mean about the layers. I mean, James, you just called yourself a filmmaker and not an activist, but I actually might argue that you're a bit of both, right? I mean, Olivier, how do you feel about that? Do you find yourself as, you guys are stepping into this international, you're crossing cultures, you've got language issues, you've got all kinds of things going on. I mean, you actually have footage of some protests near the end of the film. How do you feel about that? Are you okay with being labeled an activist?
James, you can.
Yeah,
I guess not true.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm happy. I like making films about injustices that make you angry and want people to take action. Like, definitely we're drawn, I think, as filmmakers, to stories that matter. I guess my nervousness about labeling ourselves activists is that you go in there with a closed mind and you kind of ignore any inconvenient complexity or whatever. But I think we're both thrilled that at the end of the film, you come away angry and thinking this is a terrible injustice that must be stopped. That's fine. But I think the process we go through is reflecting the kind of comprehensive picture of the situation, rather than going in there out to get the cops before we've even started recording. Go
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I said we never went to the Philippines to trial the cops. That was not, we want to see for ourselves. No, we didn't decide to make a film and say, oh, that's it, we're going to go after the cops. We really want to see for ourselves what was the situation.
I think it's really interesting comment, not only about filmmaking and frankly the editing process, but also context and worldview. I mean, how often do we step into somebody else's situation and we're really not willing to listen, and we're really not open to what the facts are or what the story actually is revealing as we go along. I mean, I think it's a really insightful observation for sure. You near the end of the film, and in fact, I think we kind of wrap up the film with, well, hey, you know what? I was just doing my job, and boy, what the things that have been justified. And let's connect it back to Nazi Germany, right? Which I know you guys we came full circle there quite nicely. But at the beginning of the film, I believe he says, we want to make change. Mm-hmm. Do you think that really fundamentally underlying all of this is this desire, and either of you, please answer the question, is the desire to clean up the Philippines, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make this happen. Oh, and by the way, the president says we can do whatever it takes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think they think there is morally they are in the right, and killing these people is a tool of policing. It's not just pointless murder. It's not settling grudges. It's the best way to deal with the drug problem in the Philippines. As it happens, the drug problem in the Philippines is no worse than any other country in the region. It's a kind of concocted crisis, much like immigration in America or anything like that with these populist rulers. But I think actually, it's interesting that you mentioned the Nazi thing, because I think as filmmakers, sometimes there are layers in the film that you don't consciously pick up in the editing process, but someone else watched the film and picked up on, as you mentioned, that I was just doing my job, and also the drugs watch list, having this list of people who are going to be killed, and just kind of the way it becomes this kind of process,
right?
And people who are involved at every point don't really take responsibility for the gravity and scale of the kind of evil. And it's just interesting to see the kind of anatomy of like mass killing. And I think, I guess subconsciously, Olivier and I know that that's all in there, but it's great to speak to people like you who see it with fresh eyes and kind of see all this extra meaning.
Well, what has been done under sort of the rubric or under the umbrella of I was just following orders? I mean, the like as you said, and this again is another whole layer to the film. This is a film about, personal choice and about responsibility, and this isn't about saying, oh, somebody else is giving me license to do this, but no, this is I'm the one who is not to blame, but I'm the one who's responsible. I love that notion of what was his finger discipline. Right?
Yeah.
But that still comes down, even though you've been given the license to do it, the finger discipline still comes down to the individual. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think interestingly with the police chief, when he said I was just doing my job, because I mean, I don't really want to give away the end of the film, but the police chief does get his comeuppance in a way once the killings reach a certain level, and I think he's kind of shocked that he gets in trouble for it, because this whole system had been set up to basically execute drug pushers to deal with the problem. So then when his career suffers because he was doing that, he genuinely is kind of completely bemused and confused about why he's the one who's got in trouble, when he thought that was the whole point of what they were doing. And interestingly with him, we'd spend a lot of time with these guys not filming, just kind of having dinner, sitting around drinking coffee, as you say.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you hear, I think over the months, our sense of their morality and their approach to policing became quite clear, and that was why confronting them about it at the end was so important, because they'd said to us countless times off camera how killing these people is the way to deal with the drug problem, and it does work. And joking about it quite frequently.
Well, you also have to wonder, and again, either of you step in here. You have to wonder, even in some of the shots that you present, the shooting range, the loading of the guns, the pride almost, and the pleasure almost that's taken in not only cleaning up my country, but actually, I actually get to kill somebody here. I mean, as horrible as that might sound, there sanctioned pleasure in the killing of somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at Demos, the head of the SWAT team, as he's kind of laughing manically. He is a sadist. You don't go out on the streets as a police officer wearing a black skeleton mask unless you like the idea of scaring people.
Well, I couldn't help but think how many gangster movies or war movies or police movies inform others around the world, including the UK and Canada and the US, about how policing should look or should be. Oh, gee, I got to find a cool mask to wear when I pull the trigger. Like, that's a horrible thing to say, but boy, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, totally. And one thing that we're really curious about is how the police will react to the film. So, we watch the film and we're kind of, people in Canada or Copenhagen or wherever will watch the film and be kind of horrified that the police are behaving in this way. But I think if you put all those police officers in a room and they watch that film, they might love it, because they seem terrifying and they want to be badass.
Right.
And I think the reason in the end they may not love it is because there'll be a reaction to the film internationally and within the Philippines, which uses the film to kind of prove that the drugs war is out of control, and they may get in some kind of trouble for it. But I think if you got them in isolation and watched the film, they might think it was made them look cool and and scary.
Right.
I was still in contact with those guys, and they still ask, when can we see the film? We saw the trailer. We want to see more. We love it,
Which is, in the trailer, you would think it doesn't present them in the best light.
Right.
It makes quite clear what's going on.
Right.
And
right.
yet for them, because their idea of what is acceptable is so warped, that they loved it. So yeah, we're slightly kind of puzzled about that, but it's kind of fascinating.
I'm imagining both of you are probably familiar with The Act of Killing, Joshua Oppenheimer's film. Did you start to see some of those parallels as you were filming, or did you already see that before you started to shoot your first frame?
It's great that you mentioned that. It definitely was part of our conversation before we started. That idea of getting inside the mind of killers and just understanding the rationale.
Well, and what's kind of interesting, killers on the side of justice, presumably, right?
Yeah, in their minds, exactly. Yeah, and I guess what's interesting about this is The Act of Killing is an amazing film, but they're talking about it decades later.
That's right.
So for serving police officers to be talking about killing in this kind of casual way is just extraordinary. So
I'd love to talk to you both about solutions and what you both feel. We can set aside, let's set aside the activist thing. You're filmmakers, but you're both still, your friends, your partners, your husbands, your fathers, etc. Whatever. You're members of the human race. I want to get to kind of what's your take on what might be a solution. This drug war kind of has gone on all over the place, right? I mean, it's been going on since the 70s, really, in a sense, way back to the Reagan era in the U.S. and Colombia and so on. And so there's variations of it, and it always seems to be met with profound violence. And it maybe we're finding out that this way doesn't work, right? Or this approach doesn't work. We need a little more finger discipline. How about we need, right? Global finger discipline. But before we go there, can we talk about the Undertaker a little bit? I thought it was what a wonderful character. I think you guys should consider doing a whole narrative TV series around that guy. He's fascinating.
He is, yeah.
We loved him. We knew we needed a character to kind of basically, because he's the guy who picks up the bodies, so he can tell you about the drugs war in a way that no one else can.
Right.
He knows when the killing is up or when it's quiet, and he talks about business being slow in a slightly kind of downbeat way. And then by the end of the film, when the killing is up again, he's like, well, "Hey, business is booming." And he looks like something out of Olivier would often reference, like he's the character in like a Western.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
The bodies. And he's something that's completely out of a fictional movie. It's kind of hard to believe that he's really real.
Well, what I also found really quite comical, absurd, ironic, whatever, is the fact that he's open 24 hours.
It's another great detail that we kind of didn't. But a couple of people have mentioned that on the sign, and it's exactly. And
it's like I mean, you guys just must smile and laugh out loud about this stuff when you're back at the hotel enjoying a drink together. But the young boy too, with the "Do Not Kill" T-shirt on. I mean, how you can't write that kind of material.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't quite believe that was what his T-shirt said. It was one of those moments that is, it seems too good to be true. It seems like you must have set it up. And then the way that basically the head of the SWAT team accosts these two kids on the side of the street and starts kind of tormenting them. And it turns out, that one of the kids has this T-shirt saying "Do Not Kill," which creates this kind of surreal back and forth between this kid and the cop who kind of takes pride in being a killer.
I just wanted to say we had no idea what the conversation was about. We didn't know what the T-shirt was meaning. We had a local fixer, but when it comes to observational filming, we try not to interact. Try to disturb the scene, and it's only later that we understood that. Oh wow, that was writing on a T-shirt.
I think he did. I think the translator did actually whisper in my ear that T-shirt says "Do Not Kill." so I kind of had a sense of it, and then you could tell the dynamic even when you don't understand the words. You could tell that Demos, the SWAT guy, was tormenting these two, taking
Oh,
great pleasure.
taking great pleasure in the power, right, and the oppression of it, and the fear that he must have been instilling in these kids, and yet probably kind of smiling on the inside about it. Yeah, I found the whole scene really disturbing. I mean, really unsettling, and I guess maybe you guys would too now as you reflect back on it. But in the moment and in the time, it's okay. What's actually happening here? What's unraveling before our eyes, or
Yeah.
unfolding, I guess.
And the language thing is interesting, like Olivier mentioned. So like the English is kind of the official language in the Philippines, so people understand it. So we could communicate with our characters in English and give direction, or get to know them just speaking English. But then they would speak Tagalog to each other
Right.
and kind of think that we couldn't understand, not really fully comprehending that we might go back and get it translated. So you get all these little moments when they kind of think that we don't understand, and they'll
Right.
say, I asked the boss if we can go overboard, as in, kill this person, and he said no, or the killings might have caught up with us, ha ha ha, and all these little moments that I guess they never would have thought that we'd kind of capture and have translated and used, but those moments really help give you like the real picture of what's going on. So in a way, it was like a perfect situation for us because we could get by with English, but they also took some kind of comfort in the fact we didn't understand Tagalog, so we're completely natural when we were filming. And as Olivier said, we tried to be as invisible as possible.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and having worked in international development and studied philosophy for years and getting involved in, supposedly precision of language and these types of things, it's an interesting comment on listening, on context, on cross-cultural, awareness and effectiveness in the sense, and then I just, as you were talking, James, I just felt like everybody understands fear, though. Right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's a universal language. But this is what I find so fascinating about great doc film like this. It's just so much bubbles to the surface. Sadly, guys, we're gonna have to wrap it up in a couple of minutes. But what yeah, what about solutions? I mean, I know that we're not going to come up with the quick fix here. I mean, this is way more nuanced, way more complicated than catching a criminal, putting them in jail, and the problem goes away. We're talking about something way more deeper, it seems to me. I mean, I love the shots. That's a bit much. I so appreciated the fact that you showed the overcrowded cells and the way the warden was treating these prisoners. In what does he say in prison? You need to act like a gangster or something,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. And it really is quite terrifying, this idea that this will lead us to a cleaner, better, more just society. Anyway, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear what either of you have to say about that. The fact that drugs are supposedly the evil of all evils, right? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So Duterte's propaganda basically makes out that all crime stems from drugs. So
right,
whether it's
right,
robbery, rape, murder, it's all by this kind of fictional, demonized drug addict,
right,
who's completely lost control. And so when people believe that, it means, you can do whatever you want to these drug users because they're not human. They can't have families. They can't be fully rounded, fully rounded humans. But I think in terms of the concept of the war on drugs, I mean, these people are the poorest of the poor. The people that are getting killed are not big time drug pushers. They are the lowest level drug runner who might be, supplementing their income by cycling, a wrap of crystal meth to the neighborhood and just basically trying to make a bit of money for their family to survive in the slum. So for me, you don't really need a war on drugs. You need like a war on poverty. Like if you gave these people more opportunity and, invested the same kind of effort and resources into actually, trying to help people get off drugs, and that sounds like kind of wishy-washy liberal speak, but, waging a war against your own population, like the poorest, most vulnerable people, is just quite clearly not the best way to deal with a problem like this. And, Duterte is never going to turn around and say, these drug users need to be supported and helped, and we need
Right.
it's and they do have rehabilitation programs, but it's pretty, it's kind of like a weekly Zumba class. It's not
Right.
It's not very sophisticated, and there's not much sympathy for people involved in drugs, so it's difficult. But I think probably globally the concept of a war on drugs is pretty discredited now, and I think obviously the big drug dealers and importers should be dealt with, but I think probably the people who are ending up dead are not really the root of the problem.
It seems like a much sort of almost easier approach. Isn't it really just a political solution in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's Duterte found a subject that resonated with the population, and it could have been drugs, it could have been immigrants, it could have been terrorists, whatever. It just so happens that was his issue that set him apart from his predecessors in politics, who were more on the left, were more interested in human rights, and were kind of discredited and seen as corrupt. So for him to be, the Philippines, Trump or Bolsonaro or whoever, he needed to say, the big evil is drugs, unlike all these people before me who were career politicians. I tell it like it is. I'm going to kill them.
Right.
And people think he's a strong man. He's going to get stuff done, and that was the platform on which he built his support, and he's still popular. A majority of Filipinos still support Duterte and his drugs war.
So appreciate having the time with you guys today. Just before we wrap it up, Olivier, I'm kind of interested to hear, and I'm assuming you're both coming to Hot Docs, but I'd love to hear you comment on the not the co-directing, but how you work together. Are you guys? I guess maybe the question is, Olivier, are you guys going to direct another film together?
Maybe, who knows?
Oh God, Olivier, be a bit nicer than that, Jesus.
No. I think we'll have a chance. I think if we had an opportunity where we can collaborate again together and make another film, definitely we'll do it.
I think the thing with me and Olivier, we did Mosul before. This was our second film. Our kind of interests and talents really complement each other, and we're very very different. So, I think if either of us worked with someone who was too similar, there would be more clashes. But actually, we found a way of working that was like pretty. So I would record sound, Olivier would be filming, and it was just a pretty smooth kind of operation. It was like a kind of perfect little team to be filming the scenarios where we were. So, and I think it's good to have like a collaborator with a different take. And I think documentary making in general, it's like you want to collaborate with the best people, and everyone at every stage makes the film better, slightly better and slightly better.
Sure, yeah. And
Olivier and I were both like totally committed to making this film as good as it could possibly be, which meant actually we didn't get in arguments. There was never an ego thing of like who's going to win this argument. It was just like we trusted each other's judgment, and we trusted that both of us ultimately wanted to just make the best film we possibly could.
I think you guys have done that, and again, congratulations on a beautiful film to watch and a challenging and engaging one at the same time. I couldn't help but to smile there as James was talking. Olivier, as cinematographer, I just saw how much finger discipline did you practice in the filmmaking of this. Anyway, you don't have to answer that question.
He's very disciplined, actually, I have to say.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I'm actually very disciplined. And I don't, spend a lot of time filming in a day, I will say. Well, I don't shoot a lot. For that doc, we really want to go to carefully compose the shot. We want to create a style with a dramatic mood, I will say, an emotional connection with the city. But I'm very disciplined, on the field always.
Well, that's good to hear. Hey, so the website is on thepresidentsorders.com. Film is going to be playing at Hot Docs 2019 from April 25th to May 5th. You've got 3 showings. Are you both coming?
We are, we can't wait. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to potentially meeting you both. I really hope we can say hello face to face. And again, thanks to you both today. We've been talking to Olivier Sarbiel and James Jones about their new film premiering at Hot Docs on the President's Orders. Thanks to you both, guys.
Thanks. That was a real pleasure. Thanks, David.
Bye.